we have two wonderful Canadian presenters, and this is Tricia Berry and Ross Leadbetter, and the universal design for career education. Education Support Services, Department of Education and Early Childhood Development. And their presentation is going to be Innovating Education for the Future. And Tricia and Ross, I know you're here, and if we can get you up.
Hello, Jake, I'm here. Julie?
Ah, great. And
They're here.
And Tricia's here too, somewhere.
They're here. Don't worry.
Hi, good morning.
Hello.
And I see your presentation.
Oh, good. You can see it.
We can see it, and we see you. This is wonderful.
Wow, it's all working. Amazing.
For the moment.
Good start.
This better be a good presentation because you're making me feel bad by having no technical problems.
Oh, well, I'm sure I can pull something off here for you.
Please, Ross and Tricia, please go ahead, introduce yourselves, and it's your platform. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much for inviting us. We're really excited to share a few things with you this morning. So talking about future-ready learning and our couple of innovative initiatives happening here in New Brunswick. I am Tricia Berry, and I'm a learning specialist for Universal Design for Career Education with the New Brunswick Department of Education and Early Childhood Development. And I'll let my co-host introduce himself.
Hi, my name is Ross Leadbetter, and I used to work at the Department of Education. And while I was there with the Assistant Deputy Minister, we set up, and with the backing of the Ministry of Education, we set up this really interesting not-for-profit, iHub Learning, that I'm now the CEO of. And my job is really to support innovative projects sort of from beside education, but with a mandate to serve public education in our province. So it's a really unique position, and it affords us all sorts of latitude that is creating some really unique opportunities, which I'll talk about in my part of the presentation.
That's great. So two future-ready innovations we want to talk about today are what I'm going to talk about first, a program called iCubed, Innovate, Invent, Investigate, and how we have adapted that here in New Brunswick. And then Ross is going to be talking about customized knowledge frameworks and the success factor skills. And hopefully we have a couple minutes for some questions and answers at the end. So I'll jump right in. So in my role at the Department of Education, I was really looking at career education and why change. And it's not even really a why, it's that we need to change. So it very quickly became apparent that education systems worldwide we're looking to build on promising career development practices to help prepare young people for future success. And what we know is that we can't keep preparing young people the way we always have. The world is changing rapidly. Look at the situation the world is in right now, and we don't really know what it will look like in the future. But what we can do and what we do know is that we have to look at innovative ways to prepare youth for future success and future job requirements. And one of those things being that we have to shift from a jobs economy to a skills economy and really focus on what learners need for future economic, social, and to respond to future economic, social, and technological change. And so moving from more the credentials to more of a focus on the importance of skill development. And so we identified in our work here at the department what are the best practices for career education. And we feel these are practices that can be incorporated in K-12 across the curriculum in all of our schools, and they will really help our students to prepare. So these are the 6 best practices that we have identified and that we are intentionally integrating across our curriculum K-12. And so one example, the one I'm talking about this morning, is iCubed. And this is Investigate, Invent, Innovate. And it's an experiential learning program that the Learning Partnership developed. And we have partnered with them to use this in our middle schools in New Brunswick. But in doing so, we collaborated with them to adapt the pre-existing program to incorporate this career development or career education component and these best practices. So they all exist now within the iCubed program. So lastly, the program, as it always has been and still is a program where students identify problems in their daily lives and in the real world. And they use everything from experiential, personalized, entrepreneurial, project-based methods to invent products or processes to solve those problems. And they do this through their learning in all of their classes. And so through participation in this, students develop an understanding of many things. But what I feel is really innovative and essential for our middle school students is that they are really making the connections between their learning, what they're learning in their different courses or curriculum, to the real world. So it's about making that connection, and which then in turn increases engagement. But students learning through these experiences will develop those skills we're talking about, the essential skills, the global competencies, the social emotional skills that we know they need to prepare for a variety of pathways as they move forward, but also for their own growth and wellness. And so we've also been very purposeful in including modern career development practices, our best practices into the iCubed program so that students can really dive deeper into their learning and those connections to where they're going, maybe work or post-secondary. So that's just a small glimpse into the program and how it applies to our career development strategy. And with that, I will hand it over to Ross.
Perfect. Thank you, Tricia. So my focus and my great interest is in how it is that we acquire, create, develop, deepen, and then convert knowledge to use. So when I was hired to work at the Department of Education here in New Brunswick, it was to help create a program where we get students into skilled pathways while they're still in high school, and so that these students can actually graduate and still get the meaningful graduation diploma and so on, but do it in a way that might be different from their other friends or classmates down the hallway, sort of thing. And what we focused on was the development of skills. So the development of the 9 essential skills. In Canada, we have 9 essential skills that define over 40,000 occupations, skilled occupations. And so we use that as a kind of a base, as an engine, in order to create this program where students would go into a very different type of a classroom in the middle of grade 10 or beginning of grade 10, and then take all of their learning towards a pathway. So if a student wants to become a chef or an engineer or a welder or whatever it happens to be, we tried to create pathways so that they could get directly to college and have a lot of experiences when they got to the door at college. So that is kind of this coupling of skills and experience was what that program was built on. And what's really interesting is that we've used that then to create what are called innovative personalized learning centers across the province. And it's all of this very sort of hands-on, skill set oriented, skill development oriented approach. And what we found is that, and this is why we have these two icons on the slides here. What we found is that during this time of remote learning, students that have learned these processes are actually doing really, really well and are able to continue on with their own learning. And Tricia, if you could put it to the next slide. So look at the conveyor belt at the bottom there. That's kind of one of the ways that I describe it, is this knowledge framework that we've created with students by teaching them. So you have the teacher, facilitator, coach, and you've got the learner, and they both learn and understand together this mechanism. And I sort of think of it as a conveyor belt that goes both ways. This mechanism of how the students learn how the essential skills work, how to understand their own learning in terms of those essential skills, how to reflect on their learning, how to evaluate their learning, how to report their learning. is a very, very tight sort of a package of, it's a framework, it's a conveyor belt, it's a means of communicating with one another. So what we're finding is the teachers that are at home right now and the students that are at home right now, they're able to connect, whether they do it virtually through the video or if they're just on the telephone, and talk about the students' learning and where they're going next. And it's almost seamless because they have this, what we're calling a customized knowledge framework. And because it's adaptable to the space, it's portable, it's customizable, and it's founded on something that's common to both parties. So part of what I do in iHub is research for education. I couldn't have done this research without this very strange and challenging COVID space that we have. And for all of despair and sadness that comes with that, there is at least something good that comes out of it in terms of our research, and we're understanding that. And then the second part is the success factor skill set. Really, that's a combination of the essential skills, essential learning skills, and the global competencies. So very much the problem solving, creative thinking, self-starting types of competencies that we know students need to have, and that the education system hasn't been traditionally designed to support. So we're kind of creating a little bit of a tension, a good tension, by talking about these things in our schools here in New Brunswick and across our system. Next slide. Yeah, so we just did some research, and I interviewed a whole bunch of teachers right across our province. Province isn't really large, but it is a good sample set. And I asked, not what's not working. What's not working is whatever it is. What is working in this remote learning space? And there's four things: the pre-existing learning frameworks, anything that has a pre-existing learning framework, whether it be the essential skills students or somebody from an IPLC, the Innovative Personalized Learning Centers, or some other types of projects. What's working is that the space is highly adaptable, and it's there's all sorts of learning activities can take place. And there's the asynchronicity of space and time. So while sometimes you meet directly with the student online, it's okay to say, here's your work, and it's okay for the student to deliver it later, and so on. And then, of course, authentic experiential learning. That's very much working right now. And I actually have some other research that I can't share today, but we're looking at that. And it's the project-based and problem-based and challenge-based learning that is really working in this space right now. And of course, one of the things that surprised me, actually, that's working in this space is teachers are able to, without a lot of distraction, share and collaborate and build relationships with their students. And so that's been a very positive thing as well. So in summation, we're really looking at, with iHub Learning, we're looking at how is it that we can pair skills and experience with reflection and formative assessment and create these learning engines that really, we may be operating in a hybrid space coming up here where some students are at school and some students are home, and maybe they switch, and we don't know. So we want to try to create these things that work in all these different spaces. And with some good fortune of essentially luck, in some ways, we've began to understand that this works in those spaces. So that's me. That's Tricia. Any last words to say?
No, unless there's any questions, I think that's a really good snapshot of where we are. It's great.
Well, this is wonderful. This is fantastic, and we all know that New Brunswick is the leading province in Canada, and we all know that. But
of course,
well, we know. I mean, that goes without saying. I'm not saying.
Thank you.
But the question is, the Learning Partnership is a national program. So are some other provinces following your lead?
Well, that's a good question, Jake. So we obviously do take our Kids to Work Day, which is the Learning Partnership's national program. And in taking on this project this year with iCubed, we were in a pilot state. So we will be continuing to move forward. It's been a little bumpy because of school closure, but we're going to move forward in looking at the pilot and how we have implemented more of the career education piece. And I think the intent, and I'm sure the Learning Partnership would agree, that they're wanting to look at this pilot and being able to offer an adjusted program to others if they have that same interest.
Great. Very good. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much.
Thank
Thanks
you.
so much.
Thank you for sharing. And by the way, all my comments about New Brunswick were absolutely correct, right?
Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.